All right, good evening, and thank you all for joining us tonight in celebration of the anatomical donors for the Oakland University Doctor of Physical Therapy program, as well as the William Beaumont School of Medicine. My name is Riley Stevens, and I am a second year in the Doctor of Physical Therapy program here. It wasn't long ago that I was in the lab also learning from these bodies and my first patient and experiencing everything that these donors have to offer. Thank you to the donors and their families for letting us get the opportunity to learn in an incredible way. Thank you to the students, faculty, and community members who are present and here today to show their respects in different ways. I'm beyond excited to experience the ceremony with all of you. Please hold your applause until all reflections and performances are complete. Following the completion of the ceremony, please join us for light refreshments.
Welcome everyone this afternoon. My name is Stephanie Attardi and I'm an associate professor in histology and anatomy at the OUWB School of Medicine, and I've been here for 8 years now. This is my first time speaking at our ceremony here, so I'm very privileged to have been asked. So this afternoon you will hear our medical students and our physical therapy students share reflections of their experiences and expressions of gratitude for their donors. My reflections today are going to be a bit different. So these are 3 very brief stories about what it's like to see this gratitude happen coming from the perspective as someone in an observational role as their teacher. So while it's been very exciting to see the concept of the brachial plexus finally click for students while they're exploring it hands-on, the most special moments have actually not been anatomical. They are more moments of tenderness, compassion, and peace. A couple of years into my time here at OUWB, the anatomy faculty and staff had just finished the students' first introduction to the anatomy lab during their orientation week. The next session was lunch, so most of the hungry students were already halfway to OUWB, leaving like a cloud of dust behind them because they were so hungry. And one student was still standing in the lab. He nervously and very quietly asked me, "I was just wondering if you could go over with me again how I should take care of the donors." He asked a lot of questions as I went over it again, how to drape and move his donor, how to care for his donor's tissues. And it came as no surprise throughout the semester that he became the guy from their team who always did those things for the donor. There was something so very special about the way he did it. I know that all students do this and do it well, but I would see him do this so tenderly and slowly as he performed the task, paying close attention to the donor as if to make sure everything was still okay with the donor. It was as if the donor was a patient in a hospital bed with worried family members overlooking. And I remember that his extra acts of tenderness and his respect for the donor's body always made me smile and be proud to work here. And kind of as a side note, I did look him up today when I was practicing this, and he has gone into a specialty where he's now working on pain management. So he's devoted his life into making others feel comfortable. And that's exactly what he did in the lab with his donor. So here's another one. 1 day or years later, a different cohort of students had completed the study of one body region, and they had just started to explore a new part of their donor. During the dissection, I saw 2 students with their elbows linked together crying quietly by their donor's side. I was like, "Are you okay? What happened?" I asked with a lot of urgency, thinking back to those same 2 students a couple months before at their first dissection, and I had remembered they were scared and anxious about seeing their donor's body for the first time. And my priority in those moments is always to ensure that they don't become dizzy and fall. But without taking a gaze away from the donor, one of the students explained, "There's cancer everywhere. I can't imagine what it must have been like for him. I'm just so sad for him, and I'm so sad for his family." Their perception of their donor as an anatomy learning tool had grown into a patient who had terminal cancer, who had a grieving family that was still out there somewhere, a human being. And I've seen this realization happen to most of our students, all in their own time. Sometimes it's not as notable as the story I just told or as noticeable, but it's still there. It is the student who subconsciously placed their hand over their donor's hand as a sign of comfort while their other team members were performing a procedure with the donor. It is the M1 student in the winter semester who has returned to the anatomy lab facility for some other purpose and breaks out into a smile when they walk past their donor or places their hand lovingly on their donor for a split second as they walk by. A year after that time that I just talked about, I remember needing to go to the lab outside of class to come and pick up something quickly. It was empty in there, or so I thought. I almost didn't see one of our students sitting quietly in the back next to a donor with her notes and anatomy atlas out. I knew that this particular student had a lot of challenges with anatomy because I was the course director. So I paused, looking for any sign of frustration or worry on her face. Should I go over there? But she looked very peaceful and content and fully engrossed in learning. She did not look alone. I decided not to interrupt that moment, and as I walked back to O'Dowd, it occurred to me that I was not leaving her in an empty lab. Because when the anatomy sessions are done, after the stampede of the class rushes to the next class, when the chatter of 125 learners has dissipated and the change rooms are empty, there still remains 21 teachers in our lab for the medical students. 21 people who gave themselves to complete strangers for education. Instead of showing up at their own funeral with their family so that their body could be a source of comfort and closure for their loved ones, they rest temporarily in our lab 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 1 year, just in case a student, even just one of them, needs somebody to study with. I'd like to thank our students. It's been a privilege to witness your humanity in the anatomy lab, and I would be able to write a reflection like this after every single lab I've been to, and I think that the anatomy faculty would say the same. I'd like to thank Oakland University, the School of Medicine, the University of Toledo, and the City of Rochester for their unwavering support for donor-based anatomy education. And most importantly, I would like to thank our donors and their families for their selfless gift. I promise that you were cared for, cried for, and that you are never alone when you stayed at our lab.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen. I'm a student physical therapist. This is my first year in the program. It's been a bit of a transition going from undergrad to graduate school, and one of the biggest factors has been the anatomy lab. I'm going to take a little bit of an unconventional approach today to show you an interpretation of human movement the way that I see it. I've always been a dancer, so when I was younger, I've been dancing since I can remember. I danced in a studio, and then I danced at my university, Grand Valley State University. And I'm actually retired now, so I will not be doing a dance up here in front of everyone, just because it's been a year. So as you watch this video, a couple things to keep in mind. Think about the pictures that each body is creating on their own, and then I want you to think about the picture that the whole group is creating.
If you see the homies with the guap, with the knots in the rows, that's how I know you really grow. With no goals, and it shows. The money blue, designer shoes, Jimmy Choo, Louis boots. If you see the homies with the guap, the money blue. If you see the homies with the guap. It's a miracle, trying to be lyrical. Town Ave, the general, eat like general. Making it difficult, effort I give it minimal. All you disposable, diamonds looking invisible. If you see the homies with the if you see the homies with the if you see the if you see the homies, if you see the homies with the guap. I've been running around the city on the same thing, got the city locked.
So this was a style of hip hop. We did that my senior year, and For me, it just goes to show that dance is very hard work, but it also takes a lot of muscle to do what we do. And I didn't actually know that I wanted to be a physical therapist until probably my third year of undergrad, and dance was one of the things that gave me that interest. Now that we are in grad school, we're learning about the anatomy and we learn it in our books, but it doesn't really feel real. There's a lot of times when we're learning and it just seems not real. And then we go into the anatomy lab and you see it in real time in front of you, and it's truly unmatched. It's amazing seeing our donors and seeing how, even though the bodies look different on the outside, they're all very similar on the inside. They all have the same structures, and sometimes you'll find an anomaly where one nerve will course in a different direction, and it's really cool to be able to see those differences between the bodies. It's always been my dream to bring my two passions together, my love for movement and science. And I just feel extremely lucky to be studying at Oakland University and receiving this opportunity to work with these donors and see all that we can see. So I thank the families of the donors and the donors themselves for giving their life to science.
Hi everyone, my name is Neil Patel, and I'm a first-year medical student here at OUWB School of Medicine. I will be reading a poem I wrote in commemoration of the selfless individuals who have so graciously donated their bodies. Without further ado, I present to you Heartfelt Legacies. The first time I held the human heart. Excitement, honor, and fear. Excitement because the heart is my passion. Honor because a soul was in my palms. Fear because it could have been my dad's heart. Left circumflex artery, right coronary artery. These are the two arteries that almost took my dad from me. I never thought I would understand his disease. Clogged arteries. Though I held them between my fingers. The arteries of another. I could see the map they made on the heart. I could see how something so little could damage someone so important to me. This heart, a machine that loved many and powered one. This heart taught me about my dad. This heart let me teach my peers and parents. This heart was better than any textbook. This heart was the fuel I needed. It powered my heart for medicine, for cardiology. I thank the woman whose heart I held. She is a heartfelt legacy.
Hello, everyone. I want to echo everybody's thank yous to everyone who put on this event, especially these two beautiful medical students in the front, the faculty, the staff, and most of all, the families of the donors and the donors themselves for providing us this lifelong learning. My name is Shreya Desai, and I'm a first-year medical student at OUWB, and I made a drawing. I don't know if you can tell who's in the drawing because I'm a bad drawer, but it's this guy right here. It's Neil. Neil and I first met in undergrad, and we worked really hard to get into the same medical school together. And one thing I never expected coming into medical school was the opportunity to see the person that I care about most learn and become a medical student and grow in their passions. So we're in lab one day, and Neil's table is like a few tables away from mine. And I'm walking to get a new tool, and me and Neil are always giving each other looks in lab. So I'm walking past his table, and I'm giving him a look, and I see him up on the stool with something in his hands, and he's showing it to his lab mates. And what I saw was him holding his donor's beautiful heart in his hands.
And now, given everything I knew about Neil's familial situation, his personal ties to the heart, seeing him in that moment be so passionate about what he was teaching to his fellow classmates, that was beautiful to me. And it was just fantastic to see that experience. And it's exactly what this snapshot is of him and that passion, the growing passion that these donors have allowed for us. So what I think is kind of an untold story, not only about the heart, but about these donors, is what they bring for us. They bring us to be leaders. They bring us to be teachers. They bring us closer to our passions. And you couldn't ask for anything more than that. So thank you to the donors and the families for bringing me this moment that I'll carry on for the rest of my medical career, and for bringing students like Neil these personal ties to medicine. They're truly invaluable. Thank you.
In my mind, our donors are the best educators our students will ever have. They're the best because they teach unselfishly. They teach bravely, and perhaps most importantly, they teach objectively. They teach without personal or professional bias. And today, on behalf of the physical therapy program and myself, I would like to express my gratitude to our donors. We are very fortunate to have you here at Oakland University. Our donors teach us anatomical lessons that we will never forget. As an instructor here for the past 25 years, I feel extremely fortunate and very humbled to be part of the teachings that occur in our anatomy lab, to be a small part of the educational moments that occur there, whether that be a student finally realizing what a degenerated disc looks like or a torn supraspinatus tendon looks like. There are many tremendous educational moments that can only occur in a lab such as ours. So, to our donors and their friends and their family, thank you so very much. We could not be the healthcare professionals we are, or the healthcare professionals we aspire to be, without you.
Dear friends, in remembrance of the profound generosity of our anatomical donors, I offer you a rendition of Julia Florida by Agustin Barrios on the classical guitar. Barrios, in creating this composition, seemingly sought comfort in cherished memories. So I invite each of you to reflect upon the memories we made in the anatomy lab. As this piece served as a tribute to Barrios's memories, I share it today with you in memory of our anatomical donors.
Good evening. My name is Genevieve McPherson. I'm a first-year PT student. Probably my favorite time of the week is on Thursdays when we're in the gross lab and we get to do our dissections. I can't even express to you how much we learn from our donors and how important it is for us to be able to see more than just the external anatomy, but what is going on the inside. So what I'm drawing here is of the brachial plexus, really simplistic, but this is how we used to study. So each of the short lines is the nerve branches that are coming off of the plexus, which is like a bundle or a knot of nerves that goes from the cervical spine down all the way to your fingers. And we had to learn all the tracking of them, what muscles they go between, what muscles they innervate, the skin, all of it, and it is absolutely incredible. And dissecting it out, it just takes so much time and concentration, and it's so rewarding when you have everything out and you get to go through it and teach your classmates or ask questions. And then my other, I guess, favorite part was when we got to get into the hand dissections. And in our functional lab, we work, like we do all of our palpations and external lab time. And I had a really hard time with the carpals. Like I just did not understand like how they sat, where they were, what articulated with what until we got into gross and got to dissect. And I was able to remove everything so that way we could see all of the carpals, and it made everything click. I don't think I would have been able to pass that part of the exam without the cadaver. So I'm very grateful for them and their families for allowing us to learn as much as we have. So thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to come and share my reflections on our time spent in anatomy in the lab. I'm a graduate of OUWB class of 2022. I'm a pathologist, resident now at Corewell Health, as it's been now renamed. When I think back, the donors were, as mentioned previously, our first patient. They also provided us our opportunity to have our first physical exam and take our first, howbeit limited, history. They taught us to practice putting together a patient's story from what we see in front of us. They taught us the value of observation, of listening. They taught us that the more time you spent listening and discovering, the more you learn about that patient. They taught us the principle that the best way to get to know your patients is to just be quiet, sit in front of them, and listen and hear their story, and consider more than just the anatomy in front of you. That is only part of their story. Each and every one of those donors was either a mother or a father or a son or a daughter who had dreams and aspirations and are more than the structure that you see in front of you. On a more practical note, they taught us to appreciate the common anatomy, what is common to each and every one of us, and also to appreciate its variations. And to also see the deviations from what was healthy into that was pathological. And we saw what may have caused that individual to die: pancreatic cancer, a heart attack, and so on. And they gave us also the opportunities to go beyond just what we can see with our eyes and feel with our hands, but also to take it and to look up under the microscope and see how each of those organs functioned on a cell-by-cell level. Beyond just the educational and beyond the physical, they gave us a philosophical education. For many of us, this was our first encounter with death as a medical student. And each and every one of us had to learn and figure out how we would deal with that. And finally, as OUWB always sought to taught and was a central theme in its curriculum, it taught us to foster empathy and love for our common mankind. For when you look at the anatomy in front of you and you look at each of these donors, you realize that while we may appear different on the outside, on the inside we're not so different. We each have a brain and a heart that is full of life and full of dreams. And it taught us, may we then overcome our biases, our differences, and love our neighbors as ourselves, for on the inside, each and every one of us is not any different than the other. And when we consider this will make each and every one of you a better doctor, and will motivate you to be the best that you can be for your patient.
Hello, everyone. My name is Haider Sabir. I am a first-year DPT student here at Oakland University. The instrument I'm playing for you today is called the marching tenor drum. I've been playing that instrument particularly for about, say, 8 years now, but I've been playing music since I was in 6th grade. Through that instrument, I have been able to play for hundreds of thousands of people here in Michigan and across the country. I probably played for a lot of you here. I was in the Michigan Marching Band for 4 years. You might have seen me on TV. You probably heard me play the Victors probably 100 times during one game. This instrument is the reason why I'm a physical therapist. I wanted to learn how I could be like some of my favorite musicians that I saw in person and while watching YouTube. I wanted to see and learn how I could play as fast as they could, as loud as they could, and with as much confidence as they could. Through this journey, I've seen a lot of my friends get injured in some shape or form. Now that drum is on a stand. Now I've had to carry that for about 12 hours any given day. So it can take a toll on your body for sure. And I've seen a lot of my friends suffer from chronic low back pain, carpal tunnel. Now fortunately I don't have carpal tunnel. Maybe I'm a little bit better than them. But I can't imagine having my gift taken away from me. And being in the anatomy lab, seeing these structures in person, seeing the forearm, seeing all these muscles is astonishing. Seeing this, these are the actual structures that have allowed me to be here in front of you playing this drum solo. It has allowed me to help others and teach students that I currently have. These are the physical structures that have allowed me to learn and potentially, help others in the future, making sure they have the ability to do the things that they love, like I get to on a daily basis. So the title of my solo is called Haider's Moose Lick 2.0. Now, it was written for me by a friend of mine, a drumming friend of mine, while I lived in Orlando for a good part of last year. And I went on a hiking trip with him, and he just came up with it one day, and he sent it to me, and he's a very good friend of mine to this day. So prepare yourself. It's not as sweet as a guitar. So if you're sitting in the front row, I can't promise you that I'll play quiet. So you may want to cover your ears, but I'll try my best.
My name is Sophie Dixon, and I'm a first-year medical student here at OUWB. Although I am up here giving a speech today, I sometimes find it difficult to find the right words to describe all that our gracious donors have taught me and how grateful I am to them. So I have created a painting which, although I am no Picasso, perhaps articulates meaning better than my words can. My acrylic painting is called The Gift of a Heart, and it represents a donor gifting us the greatest gift one could ever give, the most intimate gift of someone's own body, a gift of knowledge, and a gift we will all forever remember and be grateful for. As I look back on our time with our donors, I find that I did not think about their death like I naively thought I would on that first day, but instead, the intricacies of their bodies and the intricacies of their lives. When we carefully studied our donors' hands, I thought about what those hands had done in their lifetimes, what they have touched and felt. I thought about what they made and how hard they worked. I found myself comparing them to mine, and in doing so, I found myself connecting with the donors in a way I have come to truly appreciate. I found myself particularly emotional when we were able to hold our donors' hearts. What a gift that was, holding something that kept someone living for their whole life, the same thing that keeps us alive each day. I thought about it beating, perhaps a little faster when they felt anxious or scared, and maybe a little slower when they were in the presence of those they loved. Over and over again, I found myself connecting with our donors in numerous ways, and I found myself comparing myself to them, and while each donor was a bit unique, just as we all are, they were all the same at their core, human. What a gift it was to study the human. Our donors gifted their bodies to us as their one last gift to the world, to enrich our minds with knowledge, to guide us to learn the importance of steady hands, and to teach us how to connect. Connection. Being able to connect with our patients and viewing their lives and their struggles through our own lens will greatly determine our capacity to be compassionate physicians. And I'm so grateful to our donors for being our first patients, for teaching us and for guiding us. And I'm so grateful to our donors for teaching us a different but extremely valuable way to connect. So while we are all here to ultimately dedicate our lives to our future patients, to science, and to lifelong learning, let us not forget the importance of connection.
Hi everyone, my name's Myra. I'm a first-year medical student. Thank you all for joining us in honoring and remembering our donors. So we asked fellow M1s to share reflections on their journey through Anatomy Lab. I'll be sharing snippets of these reflections. However, you can read them in their entirety in the document that's listed, linked to the QR code in the pamphlet. So, Kamaria said, at the beginning of this semester, I felt uneasy about the Anatomy Lab and dissections on the donors. Throughout the semester, I became more and more fascinated by the things that we were learning in the lab. I discovered a newfound love for anatomy and a potential career in surgery. Mariam wrote about how she felt that our donors taught us that people were far more complex and multifaceted than words could ever describe, with complexities and nuances not even a textbook can fully showcase. Sama Ramo reflected, their selfless act to donate their bodies helped me as well as my peers have an opportunity to study human anatomy and its complex intricacies. My peers and I have gained a deeper level of respect and appreciation for the human body. An anonymous student shared, I was very nervous about dissecting the donors coming into medical school, but this became one of the most meaningful parts of my semester. As we can hear, every student had a unique experience. However, what we all had in common was that it was an unforgettable and meaningful experience. Our donors will be kept alive through the knowledge we've gained. This knowledge will not only shape our daily practices in medicine, but will also be passed on as we teach others. So in reality, our donors will not only stay alive through us, but also the future generations of physicians, patients, and peers we may teach. And that is absolutely beautiful to me. I know in the beginning, a lot of students felt uncomfortable in the anatomy lab. I mean, it does feel a little bit against nature to be dissecting into another human being. I remember the shock and excitement of when I learned that I was going to be the lead dissector for the lungs and heart, and I was so excited going in. However, once I held on to our donor's lungs, I started freaking out a little bit, and it kind of hit me, and I had a somber realization that our donor wouldn't have been able to survive without the lung that I was holding, and it helped him take every breath of his life. And as I was mid-freak out, of course, my lab mate noticed and stepped in and helped me carefully and gently put the lung back into our donor and just sat with me for a few minutes while we thought about it. Afterwards, I obviously called my mother and told her about this, and she was like, "Did you learn?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course I did." And she's like, "That's great. Just remember that, and remember that everything you're learning today will help you forward." So I thank her for, saving me throughout these meltdowns. Over time, we all became used to this experience, recognizing it as a respectful way to honor the lives of those who gifted us their bodies. As we enter organ systems, the ceremony reminds us of the humanity behind our medical education. These were all people with so many stories and loved ones, and their last contribution was donating their bodies for our education. These reflections are just a glimpse of the profound impact our donors have had on our class and the patients we will serve. So, on behalf of the entire M1 class, I extend a heartfelt thank you to our donors, their families, and everyone who has played a role in caring for them. It has truly been an honor and a privilege to learn with them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Carpenter. I'm the Stephen Scharf Interim Dean of OUWB. I'm honored to be here today as part of a ceremony that recognizes the importance of the selfless acts of our body donors. As a doctor of internal medicine, I fully understand what it's like to be a medical student in an anatomy lab. And although it was many years ago, I'm still grateful for the lessons that I learned from my first patient in that lab, in part because my path to medicine was not a traditional one. I'd never took an anatomy course before, wasn't really a biological science undergrad. I actually majored in engineering at the University of Michigan. And while I'm proud of that accomplishment, and I'm sure I would have liked to be an engineer, I decided to change course while I was an undergrad and pursue medicine. At that time, I was overcome with my desire to more directly make a difference in the lives of people, of patients. I wanted to help patients become well and help them stay well. This was coming from a very personal place. I'd watched my brother suffer from a neurodegenerative disorder that eventually took his life 14 years ago this month. He was the main reason I decided to go to medical school. I wanted to heal people, I wanted to alleviate suffering, and to provide hope. As noted, with an engineering background, much of medical school was a little bit of a mystery to me. Anatomy lab was at the top of that list. Up to that point, I did go to labs, but they were computer labs and robotics labs, not anatomy labs. They didn't really prepare me for anatomy lab. But I do vividly remember my first day in anatomy lab. I was understandably anxious, like many of you have already mentioned. I was also humbled and filled with respect for the person in front of me who had donated their body for our education. As a student, it's hard to imagine how your body donors help you shape your lives after medical school, but as some have mentioned already, they do. You will never know all the reasons why they wanted to be in the lab with you, but I'm quite sure they wanted to help you be the best person at your profession. They wanted you to succeed. Like me, it is inevitable that one day you will find yourself at the patient's bedside searching for an answer. And suddenly you will recall a moment during your educational journey as clear as day that answer will come to you. For all those future aha moments, let's take a second and silently to yourselves thank your donor for being the gift to you and your future patients. Thank you. To today's participants, the students, the staff, the alumni from OUWB and the OU Physical Therapy Program, the thoughtfulness of your performances and reflections far exceeded my expectations. Thank you for sharing your talents with us to celebrate the lives of our body donors. I also want to recognize and thank the Memorial Committee and advisors, the anatomy faculty, the staff, and everyone for making this a very special event. And I'd like to acknowledge the OUWB Body Donation Program team of our founding director, Dr. Molly Baramkala, Helena Schmidt, and Dan Schlegel. These three have been working hard to establish our own program, and their efforts will soon have a big impact within our community. Now I'm going to turn it over to our first-year medical student, Elizabeth Thurl, for this evening's closing comments. Elizabeth, thank you.
My name is Lizzie, or Elizabeth, and I want to take a moment to thank everyone for taking the time to gather in remembrance of and gratitude for our donors. As we gather here today, we remember not only the invaluable anatomical and medical lessons our donors provided, but also the unique stories that define their lives. From sunspots to faded scars, each donor lived a life and had a story of their own. Although we will never scrape the surface of these stories, I can say confidently that each donor was a wholehearted, selfless individual who cared deeply about developing the next generation of physicians and medical providers. Their decision to contribute has been a profound gift and learning opportunity for us all, and for that, we are deeply thankful. As our class progresses in our medical education and ultimately diverges across different medical career paths, the impact of our donors' generosity will extend broadly and reach communities worldwide. I hope that this gratitude felt by myself and my classmates will manifest in the care we provide our future patients. I would like to extend a special thank you to all of our performers and all the reflections we had tonight. I encourage you now to help yourself to refreshments and to reflect on this incredible gift that we were gifted this past semester. Thank you.